So name, address, and then any comments you have before the meeting, and then we can pass it around at the end as well if you guys have any new thoughts.
I guess you've all got lots of questions about what's going on with the church, and tonight it's an information meeting, just to let you know what we're thinking about with the church. I'm Paul Phillips, by the way. I live in the neighbourhood on 23rd, just west of the church, up on behind the school. I've been here like 25 years. This is my daughter Maxine. You may have met her already. She was walking around the neighbourhood, knocking on doors. And this is Jonathan Goodwill, who also lives in the neighbourhood. And we're in partnership with, have a contract on the property. And so the purpose of tonight is just to let you know what we're thinking about. And I'm sure you've got lots of questions. But so hopefully in our information, we'll answer a lot of your questions. But when we've completed our little presentation, we're happy to sit here as long as it takes to answer your questions and brainstorm any ideas you've got or concerns, and we'll talk about it. So Jonathan was going to just kind of briefly talk about the history of the place, because I've always wondered what the heck was going on in there. And it's been a rather odd place for the 25 years I've been around. So Jonathan, if you want to just have a quick chat.
Yeah, it's kind of been quiet and a bit of a mysterious presence in the neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood for 16 years now. I've probably run into a few of you walking the dog around the park and a couple of familiar faces. But this property was built in 1926. It was built by the United Church. It was the Oak Street congregation, and the area was growing, and they decided they needed a church, so they raised the funds, secured the land, built it in 1926, 1927. And in 1928, they changed their name from Oak Street United to Douglas Park United. And that congregation, the United congregation, they remained there in that building until 1936-37. At that point, they merged with the Chown United Church. The original Chown Church was at Quebec and 14th Street. It burned down in a fire, and they built a new church, which still stands on the corner of 19th and Cambie. So the Chown and the Douglas Park United congregations merged and went into that new 1937, that building on Cambie. The Baptists were looking for a home, the regular Baptist church, and they took this over. They leased it for a couple of years, and then they bought it in 1937, 1938. They remained there till 1952. In 1952, the Ancient and Mystical Order of the Rosicrucians, which is an organization kind of similar to the Freemasons, where the Freemasons kind of descended from the Protestant United Church. The Rosicrucians are affiliated with the Catholics, kind of a mystical, scientific order. They have a lot of sort of symbolism rooted in ancient Egypt, pyramids, and various mathematical stuff. Anyhow, that was their home from 1952 to 2010. And I think there was a fire in the church at one point in the 50s. And following that fire, it was originally a kind of barge board sort of exterior on that. It was stuccoed over, and it ended up with the appearance that it has today, more or less.
That photo is 1952.
So yeah,
that's the opening of the AMORC church there. Yeah. 52,
yeah. So they were there till 2010. I think the Rosicrucians were sort of a fading presence in town, and they decided to sell that. It changed hands in 2010, so that's 4.5 years ago now. It was bought by another local gentleman that has some roots in the religious community, and he was using it as a private retreat and kind of study hall. And he put it on the market. You probably all saw the sign. It went up for sale in the fall, and we reached terms with him to buy it. So yeah, it's got some 90 years, 85, 90 years of history in the neighborhood. It's not a particularly remarkable building, but it does have heritage value, and our interest in it was, is there a way that we can save this building and repurpose it and provide some housing options for the community? I'll speak to that.
Yeah, so further with the heritage, it's not classified as a heritage building currently, like it's not protected, it can be demolished. So we've engaged the heritage consultant, Donald Luxton. He's the kind of the go-to heritage guy in Vancouver. And they've prepared a report, and they're putting it and submitting it to the city in February next month as a Class C, a Heritage C building, which doesn't protect it, but it does then give it some weight and some significance with the heritage program the city has. So it's not a heritage building currently. But I think firstly, I guess, is you're probably all questioning where are we at in the process. So no application's been made at the city. This is purely preliminary. We haven't been asked by the city to even consult with the neighborhood. Just as being good neighbors, living in the community ourselves, we thought it was a good idea to come and tell you what we're thinking about. We haven't applied, so there's no official application. You will be notified if we do apply as part of the city process. What typically would happen, like we are very, very preliminary sketches at this point, subject to what happens tonight and what your ideas are and what your comments might be. We'll develop the design, and hopefully at some point we'll submit it to the city, probably in a month or two. And then that'll be called a development permit application. They'll process that over a period of 3, 4, could be a year, takes time. During that process, probably about 2 months after we apply, you'll get a letter in the mail saying the development permit application's been made. There will be no drawings attached. It says refer to a website address, as you may have seen on other development sites. Or you can go down to the city and look at the drawings there. So it means an extra trip for you to go to look. So our hope is tonight that we can kind of relay the essence of what we're trying to do, and you can see it firsthand and ask questions of us, and we can answer them. Because I found in our experience that there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding, and the bylaws are very technical, and so hopefully we can answer that and help explain what we're trying to do. The site is, let me see if I can get a site plan up here. The site is actually 69 feet wide, which is part of the significance of the church, and that it sits on a nice big wide lot, which gives it some weight. But notwithstanding that the church is there, it can be demolished, and 2 new single-family houses can be built, like you'd see everywhere else along 23rd. So it's 69 feet, so what could happen is one's a 36 foot wide on the corner, and then a 33 foot inside it, so it makes 69 feet. 2 new single family houses with basement suites could be constructed, and 2 laneways in the rear lane. That's all without any discretion, it's just an outright permit use. 2.7 FSR, which 0.7 means 70% of the site area can be developed as livable area. And that 70% is, again, can be pumped up with relaxations under sloping roofs. There's relaxations for the laneway with stairways and various things. So eventually the number actually gets up to more like 90%. And by the way, I'm the principal of EDG Homes. That's what we do. We do a lot of laneways, a lot of single family houses. And we can get a site like a 33-foot site up to 90% of the site area as livable floor area. So that's a lot of the people who approach the owner of the church. That was their scenario, was to demolish the church and build 2 single-family sites, much like what was built across Willow on 23rd. It's a similar scale.
And that's a 50, I think.
That's a 50, but in terms of the height, so this would be a scenario under just an outright use of a 36-foot lot, 33, and there's the existing house to the west. Hi.
Hi.
By the way, is the owner of this house here? It's you? Right. So that's the house. A new house that would be built beside you would be about 4 feet off the property line. So I think you have a 5-foot side yard off the survey we had. So it'd be 4 feet away. So it'd be about 9 feet away would be the house typically, and then the second house here. So these are 4 views showing looking more or less straight on from the corner of 23rd and Willow, from the lane looking back at the site, 2 laneways, assuming there's a laneway behind the property to the west. There's currently a garage or a studio, and again, just looking more from the lane of a laneway. So you might typically see 2 laneway homes and 2 large houses. under the RS5. Under RS5, you can build a 35-foot tall house, 20-foot tall laneway. So that's what we would typically expect. And when, you know, as I say, I've been in the neighborhood 25 years, and I've often walked by the church, and I was thinking, well, geez, this is for sale. What can we do to utilize the potential it might offer? Like, I've got 3 kids myself, and we're all, I guess, like you, wondering where my children are going to live. So my dream and hope is that we can convert the church into small townhouses that are more affordable and offer a different option, either as that we could downsize into one and have space for our children in it, or my kids can actually move into one or two. At this point, it won't probably happen with where they're at their stage in life, but that's the expectation, is that we're trying to offer an alternative housing form. And the church, because it's potentially a heritage, it seems to suggest that it does qualify as a heritage house. The city has the ability then to alter the zoning bylaw. So it's site specific. It doesn't mean this is like because we do this site, then suddenly the whole street or the whole neighborhood becomes multi-family. It's site specific for this heritage building, this heritage site only. And I just put this up. These are some of the houses that we've done in the neighborhood that you may recognize on 22nd, 23rd, around about, generally around Canby. And this is a schoolhouse that was converted in Strathcona. It was an old schoolhouse, and it's got 4 units. So this is in Strathcona, which is more of a multi-family, denser zoning. It permits strata townhouses, where this RS5 does not permit strata. But in terms of the quality of the finish, the look of the house, the finished product, it might be something that the city would support. They supported this, and that's something like this. So what we're doing here is not like totally out of the box and totally new. It's something that the city's keen to see supported.
Where is that one? Sorry.
Strathcona. This is on Princess and
Pender?
no, not Pender. Right in the middle of Strathcona, just about 2 blocks off Hastings to the south, on Princess, I think it is. So what procedure is it? We're looking to save the building and somehow offset the costs of saving the building. Like, to restore the church, to get an HRA, to get a heritage revitalization agreement, which is a legal agreement that permits the building to be altered from the current zoning, there's certain restrictions and requirements to do that. And one of them would be to restore the building to its more or less original appearance. Like reinstate all the wood siding, all the woodwork, try and find the original paint colors, the size of the windows, the panels, and you know, restore it to a high standard. That's part of the requirement to get a relaxation of the bylaw. So that's what we'd be looking to do, and as part of that cost of it, of lifting the building up, moving it, removing all the stucco. There's also this big delay in actually getting the permits. We could be a year or 18 months actually getting a permit. So where if we went outright and built 2 houses, we could get a permit in a couple of months. This will take probably 18 months. So there's a cost to us as owners. So we're looking to, and it's typical, we're looking to get some extra floor area to offset those extra costs and to help create this form of housing that we're looking to do. So what our proposal is this dotted outline here is the church currently sitting on the lot. It's dotted. So what we're proposing to do is pick it up and move it forward and away from the westerly neighbor by 6 feet. So the church moves over 6 feet from where it currently sits to the Willow Street, and forward on the site about 4 or 5 feet, closer to West 23rd. And then we would cut it up into 4 slices. So 4 vertical slices, much like, you can't really see this here, but there'd be 4 vertical townhouses. So there'd be a basement, a main floor, and up in the attic, up in this portion here, would be another floor. There's a lot of area up inside there. And to do that, we would add dormers onto the roof. Onto this roof form here, we'd add a shed dormer, which would create better livability and headroom. So maybe I'll pin these up there.
And we'll leave all this up. You guys can wander around afterwards and take a look at it and ask questions about it.
So we're proposing 6 units. That's not a fixed number, but in terms of what works with the existing church, the shape and length of it, and in terms of our business model to make this whole thing work and to try and achieve some level of affordability, more units is obviously better to lower the price point rather than having 4 really big units or two large units like 2 houses on there. Right? Our hope is that we could get more units smaller, which allows for a lower price point for people to move into the neighborhood or family members or yourselves. So 6 units, and there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 large unit. This brown portion here is an addition to the basement and the main floor only. So the height of the addition, you may not be able to see it from far back, but here's the existing church, the gable, and here's a main floor addition onto the side, onto the west side of the building, which is this portion here. It's set back from the front 6 feet, and it's down low. So that would be addition here, and it would be an addition onto the back of the church here, which would be part of the 4th unit. And then 2 laneway homes would be built on the lane over parking, and we're providing 6 parking spaces. So what we're proposing here is 6 units with 6 parking spaces. What you would see in a 2 single-family dwelling with 2 laneway homes would be 2 parking spaces. So what we're proposing is 6. What we could do outright is 6. But the parking spaces is only 2 outright. We're proposing 6. So there'd be a net gain in parking spaces. There'd be no effect on what you'd otherwise see, well, a much better effect than what you'd otherwise see on the street. And in order to do that, though, we've taken the mass that might otherwise be like the floor area that might be down at the lane level, we put it up on top of the parking. So we've raised the laneway up a little bit. So this is the view from the lane. So here's the garages running down the lane. 2 are open in the middle and 2 closed, 4 closed, 2 each side. And then there's the 1-story element, and then there's a partial 3rd story or half a story on the top, which is set back from the lane and set back from the west side. And it's a little bit more on towards Willow Street. So the net result is we've got 6 units, 6 parking spaces, and the units average in about 1,500 to 1,900 square feet. As part of the proposal in the church, because they have basements, quite a large basement, the church is currently 30 feet wide, we're proposing a 10-foot addition onto the side. So really the units would be 40 feet long by about 17 and a half, 18 feet wide, each one. The basement portion could be then has access from this sunken side yard, which is already sunken now. And so it's depressed from the neighbors down about 6 feet all the way along and level. That you could walk out of the basement at grade. So it'd be an accessible basement unit. So it could be wheelchair accessible. And as part of that process, we would propose a lock-off suite, which is not a secondary suite, not a basement suite, but it has the potential that, if circumstances change, the city would permit that to be used as a kind of an extra suite. They could have a nanny. You could rent it out for a student. We'd have a kitchen and a bathroom and a bedroom and a living area. That can either be part of a living space of the whole townhouse, or it could be rented off separately.
And that really depends on the user, on the buyer, right? As similar to a single-family home now, you end up with your lower level, which you might use for an adult child, for an in-law, for a nanny. You might rent it out. It might become just additional living space, rec room, home theater. That's really up to the end user. But with this configuration provides some flexibility because the suites are bigger.
A maximum of 10 separate units.
There would be 6 separate strata units. 4 of those units, the lower level, could be a separate suite. Right, they're not strata. You can't sell them.
Occupancy.
But you could have separate occupancy.
Yes.
Right.
So 6 strata suites, but yeah, potentially 10.
30 people living in that, on that property.
10 occupants, 10 families.
At
Yeah.
least 10 dwellings, not 10 people, 10 dwellings.
10 families.
20 people.
10
Yeah.
families.
Yeah. So potentially
I
like
said 30 people, yeah.
there's
Oh, yeah, sorry.
the basements.
I don't know if 10 would be 30, but
Well, if they had 3 kids, 2 adults, 5 times 6 times 8 is, yeah, like we're getting up to 40 or 45 people on a little street that runs into a dead end.
I think
Right.
those numbers are,
Yeah, but
maximum.
the basement is a 1-bedroom basement. That's all you can accommodate in the basement, is a 1-bedroom with a little kitchen.
That could be 2 people.
It could be 2, that's right, yeah, no, absolutely. And that's possibly a negative, but it's a positive too. That it allows, it's on a corner, so its effect is, in terms of all those people. But like in reality, to compare what we could do outright with 2 new houses, there's 6 suites times 3 is 18 or 20. It could be the same. But that's what we're here to discuss, is like the number of the units. The big issue is parking. The issue is like what is concerning to the neighborhood, or is it something you're quite keen to see or willing to support? So, you know, it is early days. We're just talking about ideas and getting feedback. The number of 6 units we felt was a reasonable number, given you could do 6 units outright. So there has to be an incentive for a developer. Like, nobody else came along to try and save this church. We were the only ones. There was maybe, I think, 15 or something offers on the property, which the owner refused continually because nobody was interested in saving the church. We came along quite late in the game, and he was quite pleased. Well, very pleased. He's kind of embraced the whole idea of saving the church and agreed to sell it to us. But what was I going to say about?
How much are you thinking of selling each of the townhouses for?
Well, you know, we haven't even done I mean, what does a market townhouse sell for? It's about $800 a square foot. I mean, the ones up on Canby can reach $1,000 a square foot. It ranges in price. It's kind of, these units are bigger than what the market typically sees. Like typically you keep it around 1,200, 1,400. Our units are going to be more like I say, 1,600 to 1,900. It doesn't necessarily mean that the price just keeps going up at that square footage rate. It may work out to a lower number. You know, we obviously have to have a final number to make it all work. But what we sell the units for, a price per square foot, it's you know, like you've seen the neighborhood, you've seen your values go up. You kind of get an idea of what new houses sell for. You know, it's $2.8, $3 million. So there's $6 million potentially for 2 houses. We paid market value for the property, which is basically land value, which what everyone else was offering, is they're going to demolish the building.
Right.
We haven't paid any more. Like, we're not looking to recover because we've paid more for the existing church. We paid land value. But obviously, to offset all this work and time and risk for us, we're looking to offset that cost. And at the end of the day, we make the same profit as we would building 2 houses. But the hope and the idea is that we've created something that's innovative and unique.
And then a follow-up, when do you think they might be on the market for sale? Like completed, go through the whole process that you guys speculated on?
Probably 2.5, 3 years. Yeah. I mean, with the planning part of it is wide open. We don't really know. Okay. That's an open-ended. It has to go through a public hearing. Like just to recap, I guess, in terms of somebody wasn't here, we haven't made an application. When we do make an application in a month or 2, it'll be 6 months, or it'll be a couple of months before you get a letter in the mail notifying you of the application. You've got then an opportunity to write into the city and put your comments in writing. The city will consider those, and if it's still within the realm of possibility, they'll support it with conditions, responding to what your concerns might be. Even then, though, it won't be approved until it's gone to a public hearing in front of council. So you'll have 2 opportunities: one written from the notification letter, and a second at the public hearing to respond to it. But our hope is that we can work together before we get to a public hearing and resolve most of the concerns you have. Yes?
When you say application, you mean rezoning application?
No, a development permit application. It's just like a planning permit.
And would a rezoning be required?
Well, it would apply, not technically, no. It's through a heritage revitalization agreement, which the Heritage Department comes on board to say, the building's significant, we'd like to save it, we're willing to vary the bylaw. The Heritage Department has that power to vary the bylaw. Essentially it's similar to a rezoning, in that they've rezoned this particular piece of property with this building on it. If the building burns down, then that doesn't necessarily apply anymore. It's only good while the building stands and saved. Like it's an incentive. You see it around often, the Stanley Theatre, the York Theatre down on the Commercial Drive, where incentives are given to save a building. There has to be some incentive, otherwise, like everybody else does, they just demolish everything. Currently, there is no restriction to demolish this church, though. It's completely wide open. Yeah.
What's your proposed FSR on that plan there?
On this
90.
one, I think it's around 1.1.
Oh.
Like I was saying before, you could build, this works out to about 90%, a little bit older. This is about like another 20%, something like that.
Yeah, and the two Coach House Laneway homes in the rear are considerably smaller. They're about 1,000 square feet each. So there's different kinds of accommodation at different price points within the development.
Did that 1,000 square feet increase? Because usually with properties around that size, normally you're allowed only about 700 square feet. Is that something that's changed recently, or is that just what you're proposing?
It's a proposal, and it's
Okay.
specific to this site.
Okay.
And all.
So it would
kind
be
of-
an exception to what's normally allowed then?
Yeah, the whole thing is.
Yeah.
An exception to what's allowed, right? Because you wouldn't see townhouses, strata type in this RS5 zoning in this neighborhood.
So what's your backup plan if you can't get the heritage, or if you can't get, the zoning, agreement or whatever? What's the backup plan for the property?
We just keep working at it till we make you happy. I mean,
Okay.
we want to do. I really want to do this, right?
Yeah.
I live in the neighborhood. It's my community. It's my children's community. I'd like to see it happen. But if there's total opposition from everybody, well, our backup plan is 200 and a
Gotcha.
and 2 acres. I mean, we wouldn't go into this with this as the only option. Yeah. Yeah. But my hope is to work so it happens in some fashion.
So then you're not contractually obligated to the vendor to save his church. You can do whatever you want. Your intention is to save it, but if it doesn't work out, you can do whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
right? So
Within
earlier
the
you said that,
zoning.
I don't know which of you said that, there's no financial benefit to doing this over doing the two houses, but you're talking about getting higher FSR, so necessarily there's a financial benefit to doing it, otherwise why would you go through this application?
Right.
Well, like I say,
But just be straight, come on.
we'll be straight. There's extra costs, right? For one, there's another year at least of planning time, where we could have these permitted in, and by May we'd have the permits, would be under construction, we'd have them built and hopefully sold by February next year. Instead, this will probably be February or May, June next year before we even have a permit. So there's all that holding cost and time and risk of our equity, our cash. And then there's the extra costs in raising the church, taking it apart, moving it over, building a new foundation, all that extra, and then restoring it to a standard that the heritage consultant deems appropriate.
So you're suggesting that it could actually be less beneficial to do this than to do two houses?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
No, the idea is when we apply for an HRA, which is a heritage agreement, we have to submit a pro forma to show that our costs are offset by the benefit of the FSR. It's a quid pro quo. There's no extra gain in terms of the city's point of view. Their real estate branch does an analysis. They look at the units, they look at the FSR, they compare it to what you could do outright. At the end of the day, you want the scale to be balanced. The idea here is not to make an excess profit because you're doing this. It's just to compensate the owner for his efforts and because the idea is this is a community benefit to everybody. The owner shouldn't be penalized to save it. But if the community doesn't want it, obviously that's not what's going to happen. But the idea is that you save a heritage building because it's for the wider community and the local community. And the owner shouldn't bear the financial burden of that. It should be compensated for that cost. But at the end of the day, there shouldn't be any great imbalance between what we could do here and what we can do here. That's how it works. If real estate analyzed and said, well, the owner's making an excess profit over and above what he could make here, they'll refuse it and they'll scale it back down until it balances out. But just to be clear, I've done a lot of restorations of older homes, and like this one on the corner of 19th and Laurel, everybody knows that house. That was a wreck when I took it on. That was maybe 15 or 18 years ago. It's my passion. It's what I love doing. I love saving older buildings and repurposing them into a viable living space. That's an up and down duplex strata. It's the only one in Douglas Park. Well, the only other one is the one we did on 19th, where we cut this one back in front into a duplex. It's what I love doing and what we enjoy doing, and I feel it just benefits everybody. So financial gain or loss aside, it's my passion. It's what I love doing.
This is a question with respect to the HRA and the Heritage Revitalization Agreement. You said, my understanding of the process is that you enter into negotiations that's what gets presented, at the development permit stage. So I just wanna know, have you had those negotiations, or are you having those negotiations now?
We had a preliminary meeting before we agreed to contractually buy the building. We had a preliminary meeting saying we'd like to save the church. How would we do that? Would we cut it up into units? What would planning department see as a possible fit? We showed them this scheme roughly like this. This was back in November. It wasn't this developed. It was kind of very just a plan. Wasn't even this developed at all. They were receptive to it, but obviously conditional upon receiving more details and upon neighborhood notification, upon the heritage piece being classified. Currently, the building isn't classified. The heritage consultant has done a report, and it says it's a heritage C. It qualifies as a public building. It's a much more stringent level to meet a minimum, right, where a house can meet it quite easily, like any old house in Douglas Park. Given a bit of movement, you could make it a heritage case for it.
Is there any input on the heritage designation itself? Does the community have any input on the heritage designation itself, other than your plans?
I don't think so. No, I mean, there's a heritage commission that meets once or twice a month, depending on the workload.
Right.
They'll look at it and analyze it themselves. They're all heritage nutters, and maybe a few.
Do you know whether those are those public meetings?
No, but I don't know actually. You may inquire about that. You could go and ask that. Yeah. Typically, I've never seen public there. No, just the presenter there.
I will say my concern between the two options is having two houses, we only have one set of neighbors that are using the backyard area.
Right.
Whereas this, we're gonna have 4 different sets of neighbors using the backyard, which looks onto our house and looks like our backyard and will seriously impinge our use and enjoyment of it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a legitimate concern. When I first looked at the site and I walked around it, I felt that it had a lot of merit in that side yard is very depressed already. Like it's not natural grade, it's been cut out and lowered. So in terms of the difference of the grade, that fence that's there, I think already, whenever I've walked in that backyard, I can't see it at all into your yard.
Okay.
And that wouldn't change. I mean, you can wander on the site now, I presume there's a gate that it opens. I don't see any potential conflict on the ground level. What might be a conflict is at the main floor level. And then you may not be able to see it, but there's dormers on the west side of the building. Those are just secondary bedrooms. One is like the children's bedroom. They have windows which potentially look from bedroom down, which is the same as the building house next to you. They could look down into the yard too. Right. So
there's no plan to like balconies or anything like that.
No. Well, what we are proposing though is women on the main floor. We would maybe do a little cutout just so there's no, because currently there's only a front door at grade to Willow, just so there's barbecue or something could be there. Just a little 8 by 5. Yeah, so there'd be one maybe here and there and there. Your house back is at this corner here. So really it's just this one that has, these other ones are way up front. There's a patio in the front unit faces West 23rd. This one would face, there's no windows on your side, I don't think, of any public area.
No, they designed it, so.
Yeah, so in terms of the privacy, that's something we'd have to be very sensitive about, and we'll work on that as we progress with the design. But in terms of the ground level courtyard, I don't think there'd be any impact in terms of privacy.
Well, the other thing about the site is because the building is on, it's already on the easterly side of the site, it would be moved further to the east, is you end up with not quite a vacant lot, but you end up with, I think there's 21 feet to the property line before any structure, then plus whatever the setback is on your property, another 4 or 5 feet. So,
yeah, so 26 feet to your house.
Is there a plan though for a path or anything behind there?
This is a path here.
Right.
So that would be like a set. If somebody parked in the back here, they would come down this path, potentially enter in the back at ground level, or they may come along Willow and enter in the front door.
Right.
But that's just a fire exiting and the secondary exit. If you're in the basement, then you can exit down this path.
again, it's below, its grade is I think it's a couple of feet, if not more, below the western.
Yeah, that's quite low. Sorry, you had a question back there.
I just was curious about who owns strata units on the, not the strata units, but the laneway houses.
Who owns them.
Is it Strata that owns them, or are they sold separately?
They're strata, so they'll be sold separately.
So those laneway houses you could sell separately as you.
Yeah, all 6 units would be separate strata title, be part of the same strata, but each one would have a separate title and similar, you know, to a half duplex or a townhouse or a condominium.
Okay,
Same
so that's
kind of
part of your
ownership
HRA agreements, that you can sell those
Yeah.
laneway houses.
Yeah.
Whereas normally you wouldn't sell a laneway house, right?
That's true. That's the current lay of the land. But there's noise in the wind that shortly laneway houses will be stratifiable on your property.
That's very good.
Yeah, well, some will agree and some won't, but that's in the city's effort to try and create affordable housing. I realize that laneway houses just are a very expensive rental, and trying to create home ownership, so there's noise about making laneways. So I mean, like, we may be seen to be pushing the envelope currently, but in 5, 10, 20 years, there'll probably be all apartments around here, but along King Edward now, I see that there's already up at Laurel, they're talking about land assembly on King Edward to Laurel now, so although this looks aggressive, compared to what is going up on 25th, it's very modest actually. And I guess I should point out that there's 2 calculations when you do floor area. One is the area above the main floor and upper floor, and the other is the balance, what's left over from your 70% is the basement. So in a new scenario, you're allowed 45%, well, there's different ways, it's complicated, but essentially 45% on the main floor and upper floor in RS5. In our proposal, we have exactly the same number on the main floor and upper floor. We have no more mass than what you'd otherwise see in 2 single-family houses. What we're asking for is a relaxation in floor area is contained in the basement of this. That's where the extra density is, in the basement. So again, that's kind of fits into this whole recipe. That this seems like a good fit for something like this. And then that the increase in FSR is contained below grade, it's out of sight, but for your westerly neighbor, which is it slopes down. But from the street appearance, what you see on the street is just what you might see as a single-family house, except now we've got a big 23-foot gap. So that the building reads still like an assembly building, like a church, because it sits on a nice big wide lot, rather than cramming another little skinny house beside it. So it meets a lot of good kind of planning and incentives. So you're next year.
Yeah, I'm just curious about something. If you apply for the heritage, and you get the heritage, and then you go into the building and you find, oh, you know, it's actually not salvageable. So at what point, you know, does this just become another strata development because you really can't save the church? Because for whatever, structurally, it's just not something that makes even economic sense aside from other sense. And I do salute the fact that you would like to take a piece of heritage and maintain it. That's a lovely thought, but you're creating density in an area. You talk about King Edward, that's a huge arterial street that would support the density. You're talking about a small street, as this lady has pointed out, dead ends into Douglas Park. And as it is, it's impossible to park on that strip between 23rd and 22nd.
Yes.
As it is, because there is so much overflow crossing, particularly on a Saturday morning when they've got soccer games and things happening.
Well, it's a hospital too, right?
Sorry? And a hospital, exactly. And there's nothing zoned for no parking in that area.
Right, well, that can be changed too.
Residence area.
That can be changed, that's just residence.
So I'm not really sure I'm understanding your vision in terms of how it benefits the neighborhood in terms of densification. I see it almost as a slippery slope, that you create this densification in this little corner, and then you're just looking at other opportunities in the neighborhood. And I guess we're all probably single-family homeowners here who cherish that particular luxury.
Yeah, good points. Well, firstly, regarding the heritage piece, the Heritage Revitalization Agreement, the heritage piece, only applies if the building is saved and retained and restored. If that's not possible, the whole deal's off, right? It's only applicable to the church. It doesn't apply to the land, it applies to the building and the land that it sits on. If the church is not salvageable or falls to pieces, it gets burnt, that's the end of it. We're back to 2 single-family houses. So it's very contingent upon keeping this old relic and restoring it to some semblance of what it was, and keep it under the community, you know, respecting what all these people were there about. And so in terms of a slippery slope, like I remember when I first started the presentation, it's really site-specific for this building. So no other, if you wanted to, somebody wanted to suddenly or next door, say, or across the lane, say, oh, that looks like a good idea, I'll do mine. You can't. You won't, unless you've got a really historic building that's, like, and I can't think of many in the neighborhood currently, that would apply it in that circumstance. But currently anybody can do it. Like, if you've got an old house and there's a lot of pressure to demolish it, then the Heritage Department will look at it and say, well, okay, we'll give you a little extra, and they currently do actually, right? If you've got an old house, the city's just trying to disincentivize demolishing your house. If you want to demolish an old pre-1940s house currently, you've got to recycle 75% of it. If you've got a 1940s house that they deem to have a little bit of character, like it's got the existing barge boards, old windows and failing, if you want to demolish it, you've got to then recycle 90% of it. So that means taking it down by hand, sending it all to recycling center. It's another $20,000 or $30,000, and that's to every house in Vancouver right now. That happened in September. And in RS5, if you've got an old character house, pre-1940, that you want to demolish, you cannot get discretionary floor area. So under the current zoning, there's two streams, outright and conditional. One, the outright is much less above the ground, like main floor and upper floor is a certain figure. If you want to demolish an old character house, you can't get the increase, which some houses in the neighborhood have. My house, for instance, on 23rd up there, you can get more above ground if you do a character style house that respects the street. So already there's those sort of restrictions in place, and there's already incentives to save old houses. And I mean, the Heritage Department isn't going to just for every person that walks in the door go, well, you've got a nice old house, let's give you 6 units. I mean, it has to all and its total sum weigh up to be a good idea. And if the general consensus is this is not a good idea, then it won't happen. So right now we've had a preliminary discussion with the Heritage Department. They're interested in it. That it's council policy to encourage affordable housing, to encourage housing choice, and to come up with some unique ways, whether these become rental, ownership, council's interest, because I've heard from the communities around Vancouver who people want it. I mean, I know my kids want it. I mean, we're all lucky, I'm lucky, to have a single family house I bought 15 years ago. I couldn't afford to buy in the neighborhood now. 2.5 million, 3 million, I can't do that. So it's great for us, but what are we going to do in 10 years? So my vision and hope is that we can do something, like the cutting an old house into two, making it a strata duplex. So now 800,000 for each half, 1,500, 2,000 square feet. A family lives in there now with 3 kids. They wouldn't otherwise live in the neighborhood. So it is kind of good to be here now, and tough luck to you if you're not. But so our vision is to try and open it up a little bit, and support variety of housing without negatively affecting everybody else's quality of life. And just in terms of King Edward, in terms of that's a main arterial street, yes, but the people across the lane from King Edward, on the north side of King Edward, are going to be heavily penalised. I mean, those are 3, 4, 6-story apartments going on King Edward. 24th. Yeah, anyone across the lane from King Edward, significant overlook, significant shadowing. Like it's heavy duty. I would be screaming up in arms about that if I lived on 24th along there or on 26th on the other side. Where we're looking at this and going, well, where's the real hardship to everybody? We're proposing 6 units, 6 parking spaces. We can do 6 units, 2 parking spaces.
No additional height.
It's actually below height as well. Yeah. Who was first? Yeah.
Sorry. I was just gonna say, looking at the plans up there next to the boat and that one, wouldn't it be better if you had 6 units to just do like a complete row house?
Right along here?
Yeah, and then have parking, like some of the houses on 23rd, on 24th on our block, you park under the house kind of? Then it would.
How do you mean park from the lane under this way?
Well, no, the row houses, no, they'd be, well, I guess you couldn't have driveways all over there.
Yeah, another one here, another one here, yeah?
Yeah, because that one, it sort of looks like the property's all chopped up, sort of having a row house like at 10th and Hemlock, where they're all in a row.
Yes, I think we did that one actually.
Yeah, it would look better, I think, personally.
Yeah, well, in terms of heritage, what the Heritage Department and the Heritage Heritage advocates would like to see is a clear distinction between the old building and whatever's added on too. So what we've done is we cut the church right where it ends now, and the row house or the extension, the additions are quite distinct, a lot lower. So there's a clear, rather than just having one big long line, and the church kind of gets lost in this. So it's, well, sorry, you may not be a bit far away, but the church here's the end of the church, and then these little laneway houses are lower down. So there's a clear delineation between the old and the new. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of parking, it's an option to come. I don't know how you get 6 parking spaces doing that though. Because, but yeah, there's another thought. We should look at that.
About the neighborhood in general, the Canby corridor rezoning process says that sometime in the future, they're going to reconsider the zoning for 3 blocks either side of Canby Street. So they've now done Canby Street, and they've done the arterials like King Edward and put increased density there. So that future 3 blocks would come to Willow Street.
Right.
Do you know anything about the progress of that? If that is moving forward, if there's been any progress on the rezoning of that area?
I think that's the phase 3 of the Canby
Yeah,
Corridor
that's right.
project. I'm not sure it's 3 blocks. My understanding was it was as far as Ash on one side and Yukon on the other, which is just sort of 1 or 2
okay.
blocks, Tupper and then Ash and the other side Yukon. And the idea there was for, it hasn't gone,
Yeah.
I think it's on the agenda for the next year or two to bring that. But they're talking about townhouse, this kind of form of
Right.
housing
Yeah,
in those blocks.
my understanding was
So
that
the
we would
ability
expect
to
to
do it.
see much more acceptance of this kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
on multiple blocks.
The idea being that on the arterial street, you have 4, 5, or 6 stories, and then on
Yeah.
these blocks, you're down to a 2-story form, but rather than single family,
Yeah.
there is a possibility of having a townhouse.
And I'll read it again, because I was pretty sure it came to Willow, because I'm on that corner of Willow, so.
Yeah, I don't know if it comes that far though. Maybe Heather or Ash.
Yeah.
But I think the vision is if you go to City Hall, walk around City Hall there, 15th, 14th, Yukon, that kind of thing. We do a lot of work in there ourselves. So it's like doing a triplex with a laneway or a coach house in the back, so 4 units on a 50-foot site. On a 33, it gets tricky, but maybe 3 units on a 33. I think that's the vision for that 3rd phase of the density. Yeah, which is kind of we got a 69-foot lot in the City Hall neighborhood. This would be what you might see in the City Hall. You don't get a 69-foot lot, but that's what the density you would see in that. That's RT7, RT8. So that's kind of what we're modeling this after.
And that is strata, that, to speak to the laneway and this being that, rather than laneway, they're referred to as coach houses, and those are strata title, and you can't own them as part of a strata.
Yes.
Kitty corner to that property is the house right across the street from us.
How do you mean kitty corner?
Well, on the.
Like across 23rd, on the southeast side?
Correct.
The property that faces 24th?
It faces Willow.
Willow.
So it's the entire block.
Right. Yeah,
And I don't know how deep that lot is, but 155, and how wide is the lot? 33. Well, I mean, what's to say they don't take that heritage house and put in a major triplex, fourplex, 4 units on that lot?
Nothing. I mean, they'd have to come up with a valid scheme that the Heritage Department supports.
So that's the slippery slope.
No,
one has nothing to do with the other.
One is not the other, no, because, I mean, like I can say, well, I've done them, this heritage building was converted into 2, 15 years ago. This one was a heritage building I converted into 2 with the schoolhouse behind it, so there's 3 units on that lot. That was 20 years ago. It hasn't been a slippery slope. That's the only 2 in Douglas Park. Like, it's not, I've done many more heritages in single family as well, like in everywhere. We've done heritage like in Kerrisdale, a lot of it, where you get an old house, it's a beautiful craftsman house, everybody wants to demolish it, we'll come in and say, no, we want to save it. And we might do a duplex and a little coach house on the back. You know, in a modest scale, it fits the street, but doesn't affect anybody overly harsh, but benefits the community long term. So it's not, it doesn't mean a cascade of applications coming, but the city is hoping it does. Because that's the community, you know, and a broader stroke, that's the message that I've been getting is save old buildings, create more affordable housing and alternative housing choice, rather than building 3,000 square foot monster homes with a laneway that you can rent out for $1,800. So that's where this seems to be the sentiment. But I know in our neighborhood, I live in the neighborhood, so, and I know the parking issues, and I know the problem about buying a property in here and the values that they are. So I don't live next door, but I'm aware of the situation here, yeah. But, so that's why we've said 6 parking spaces rather than just 3 or 2, like you might get otherwise there.
The other thing too, to speak to the site, because it's a corner property and a 69 feet of frontage on one side, 122 feet of frontage on the other. You know, not that parking in front of a house is reserved for its residents, but there's lots of, you know, arguably on a Saturday morning when soccer is going on, there's a lot of activity in the neighborhood, but there's the ability for the people that live in this to park their cars in front of their houses without taking parking away from anybody else. But irrespective of that, you know, the proposal is to have 6, to have a dedicated parking space for each. So the corner site helps alleviate some of those parking concerns on its own, just because of the amount of streetscape space there.
Yes.
Usually most people have 2 cars.
It's not their show. There's a parking problem before we're adding possibly 10.
It could be 10, yeah.
But I think it's mostly out of neighborhood people parking during the day. In the evening, right now, there's tons of free parking there.
Well, the university sprinklers parked there for the last 15 years, like 4 trucks. Every day, there were 4 trucks sprinkler company there. So it's not like there was parking.
They're gone, they've moved now, so one less.
They sold their business.
And if you're having difficulty parking, you know, pick up the phone, call City Hall, because it doesn't take much to get either signage up that says that you can't park there unless you're a resident.
Actually, you have to circulate. You have to. That's not true.
You
You have to go to the city, and you have to.
Yeah.
No, it's not simple. You said it's simple. You have to go to the city. You have to request a change. They review it. They go send it to parking engineering. Engineering does an assessment and a study. They come up with some kind of a recommendation or a solution. They circulate that recommendation and solution to all the people that are affected by the change. All those people need to vote on it. And if they agree on the change, then something can happen, and then I guess whatever happens.
And then
if
you
you don't
have to
agree,
pay.
then you're right back to and if
And then
they
you have to
agree
pay for a permit.
today, the way and where you live,
Permit park.
Just
and
nice permit, yeah.
today where you live, you're sort of
Residents.
your rules are grandfathered. Those rules where you live aren't the same as where, you know, the 1 block away. You need to
No, but
buy
I
a
live on
permit.
the 600 block of West 19th. I've been there for 16 years, and
I'm just responding to your point that it's a
Right.
simple process and
No,
that
but
there
if-
isn't a parking issue.
if there is the perception that there's a problem, like City Hall is driven by complaints. If enough residents say, "Hey, I can't park here," they will react to it. I mean,
Wow, I'd like to
because
learn more.
Because I know, and I never had a problem.
Oh.
But after living in that house for 6 years, signs went up one day that said residents only parking. Now, it's not permit. I don't have to buy a permit. It's only enforced by complaint. You know, if somebody picks up the phone and says, "There's someone in front of my house for they don't live here," they'll react to it. But, you know, there is a mechanism there to deal with that.
I've found those signs very effective. I mean, being Canadians, we just don't park where we're not supposed to. It's
Well, we
amazing,
asked-
like those signs went up and
we asked the
nobody
city-
parks on that strip.
We asked the city if we could have the signs that you have on your street
Yeah.
installed on our street, and they said they don't do that anymore. That's a grandfathered rule. Yeah.
Well, I'll look into it further, yeah. There must be a mechanism to get them up.
Yeah,
Because
there's a
the
new
hospital parking is just crazy. I mean, the nurses are going around the neighborhood looking for parking at 7 in the morning.
Yeah, you know.
Do you have 3D drawings like you had on the left there of the 2 bigger houses of that as well that we could look at? Just
Well-
seeing what the sightlines would look like compared to our house and that kind of thing?
Well, this is it here.
It's hard with the trees to see what's happening.
Yeah, well,
It's kinda-
yeah, well, if you come closer, you can see it. I mean,
Can you? Okay.
feel free to wander around, but yeah, I mean, this is basically exactly the same view as this view,
Okay.
which I've just colored it up to actually give you a realistic, you don't actually see much of the church now, when in the summer, when the leaves are on the trees. That'll be the case when it's moved as well, so. Those are exactly the same views as these 3. This one's a different one, which I think I might have one of this from that same view, actually not colored, if you want to see that. Yeah.
Would either one of those options preserve more or less of the landscaping that's presently there? There's some nice trees on the 23rd Avenue side.
Yeah, they're like, the site plan here is showing this corner that's this 21 foot has been left more or less as it is. So I think there's a large, I don't have a photo here of what's going. I think there's a large cedar or something, or a spruce pine right there. That could be retained. Where if we built 2 new single family houses, basically, well, as you see in the neighborhood up on 23rd right now, it's just a clearscape. So there'd be nothing left. So there is potential with this. It would come in and just slide some beams under and jack the house up and roll it over to the corner and retain. I mean, it probably will be a requirement from the city's point of view. They're very heavily on retaining trees. Like it's to the point where they won't let you build a house anymore, where you might be able to build a house if there's even an apple tree. Or if you want to put a garage in the back of your lot and you've got an apple tree there, you cannot build a garage. We've got clients that paid $2.5 million for a 50-foot lot that's got 2 apple trees in the back. No garage, sorry, not allowed a garage. So if there's a significant tree like this pine would probably be, our scheme would retain it.
Most of the trees, the significant trees are all on city property there, the majority except for that one. I think it's, it's a tree-lined street there.
Well, there are a few trees in the front here, I think. I don't know how much of those maybe there's another one we could say possibly up in this corner here.
If the process went through and the permits were all in place and the building commenced, how long do you think that the project would take from a construction point of view?
Too long. Probably a year, maybe a little longer, probably 18 months. Like 2 houses, well, a house normally takes 9 months to a year. I'm not sure how long the one on the corner took across the street. That was probably a year. It would take longer, obviously, because there's more units, there's just more complexity involved. It's more kitchens in there. But yeah, I'd say 18 months. Yeah. But again, it's on the corner, so access is good. The disruption in terms, I mean, I know people up on Laurel right now, if the house has been built up on 23rd, there's huge trucks coming up and down the lane and scratching cars. It's on a corner, it's readily accessible to King Edward, so the effect on the neighborhood during the construction phase would be relatively minor. We're no worse than a single family anymore.
Yeah, it's just, again, getting back to the parking, I'm still trying to get a better idea. If you've got 6 separate dwellings and then you've got another 4 block offs, so you've got 10 dwellings effectively, whether they're strata or not, and an average of 2 cars per, so you got like 20, and you've got 6 parking dedicated. Where are the rest of those cars supposed to park?
No, it's a good point.
I think I might even be conservative because in the main dwellings, I think, it's a good chance you've got a teenager or late teen who's got a vehicle as well. I mean, I think 20 is probably a conservative number, to be honest, cars.
Yep.
So you've got at least 14 cars, maybe, 16, 18, whatever, but even 14, where are they? How many can you park on Willow right there?
Well, it's 122 feet long.
Right,
so
you can't park right to the corner,
no.
You have to have setbacks.
So say take off 20 feet back and 20 feet back from that corner, so you're left with 40 off 120, it's 80, and a car takes up 20 feet.
Right, so you
so
got
4.
So
yeah.
where
I think I've seen 5 along here, but so say 4 here and maybe 3 there. So it's 7.
Right, but where are the other 3 minimums?
Well, there's 6. There's 6 here.
Right, but that's not, the map that I just did, it's more like 20
Yeah, okay.
cars.
So that's 6 there and 7 around the corner, it's 13, so we're short 7.
So you can make the same, let's.
Hold on, yeah, I suppose, yeah. So like, we've got, here's an outright example. We've got 3 units on each site, so that's 6, times 2 is 12. They're providing 2 spaces, so they're short 10. Under an outright.
On an outright, on average, you've got two adults who park their cars in their garage.
And there's only 1 garage. And on a lane, we look at any laneway.
Excuse me, the laneway, which is an ill-conceived idea in my opinion anyway, but because of that, they should allow more parking for the laneway.
Well, actually,
story.
With the laneways now, they realize that when you put a garage in the laneway, it doesn't get used for parking. people converted into another bedroom, and now they have a 2-bedroom laneway. So they've said that when you build a laneway, the garage counts in your floor area, and they've given you more floor area in the laneway. So now there's no parking, actually, on a typical, so now we have 3 units with 6 each lot, that's 6 units, times 2 is 12, with no parking. So now you've got 12 people looking for a car parking space. That's the typical. That's right. Yeah, so you've got 12, potentially, and you're using your math, you've got 12 people looking for car spaces around the outside with no ability to park within the property.
It's gonna be a bigger problem than the outright.
No, it potentially could be, but that's assuming the worst case scenario that everybody locks off their suite, which I don't see actually happening. And if I was to live there myself, that basement would be my little home office. It could be a rec room, a media room. Could be my mother coming over to stay once in a while. I would not use it because it's a more affordable price. I don't need to rent it out as a suite.
But you have to assume that there will
Yes.
be people with vehicles. that
Right.
are gonna use them.
And there may
Let's
be.
be frank, these are gonna be sold for a price that the people who are buying it will be factoring in renting out the lockouts to pay for it.
Potentially. That's the hope. The hope is that these are affordable to a bigger range of people because you could potentially rent out. But like, the idea is that, again, it's flexible housing. So initially, a young couple, my daughter with her boyfriend, husband, moves in here, has to pay the mortgage, she has to rent out the suite. 5 years, 10 years later, they've paid off some of the mortgage, they've got a higher income, they don't need the suite anymore. It reverts back to their living use for their child or something. So it's where you buy a big single family house, you're paying $2.5, $3 million, you've got to rent the suite out unless you're a millionaire. And some of us may be lucky to do that, but a lot of people, most of us aren't. And so, I mean, we've done this a number of times, and parking is always the #1 complaint about parking. It's parking. And it happens every project we do, whether it's 6 units or 2 units, where we're looking to go outside the zoning a little bit. The parking is the big issue. And in this case, this is actually, I feel, fairly modest increase in the inconvenience of the parking potential to the neighborhood, given what we could build outright on the lot. Like, it's an increase, but it's not like where other projects we've done where there's no, the city's actually pushing and advocating to have no parking on the site. That's their mandate now, is to say, forget about parking, everyone's gonna be on their bikes, you know. And we would rather see floor space down in here and no parking at all. That's the direction they would push us, and have done on previous projects, to just forget about parking. So we're saying no. We believe that the community is probably going to be upset about parking and the number of units and potential cars. So we want to propose 6 spaces for 6 units and potentially 4 lockups. So I mean, in every development that outside the box a little bit, there's trade-offs, and what we're just trying to do is minimize the trade-offs for everybody, and at the end of the day, save the church.
What about below grade parking?
How do you mean below grade?
Well, you have to dig deeper, right?
Drive underneath, yeah.
Yeah, well, in that case, then you've got to go below grade.
Well, you got 2 spots there where they're open parking, so technically that could be the entrance to the below grade parking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you could.
And then you could get 10 spots below.
Well, you could come in here and you could possibly drive in here. Yeah. Each unit could have a parking garage below it. That's true. So the whole basement could be dedicated to parking. Yeah.
Well, below the living space, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, not below the basement, but at basement level. To actually go down below the basement.
It's 2.
Oh, that would be another 8 feet. You need a really long ramp, so you'd be ending up coming here, and probably about here you'd be able to actually get below the basement. If possible, but very inefficient, and it would just take the whole proposal off the table in terms of costs. We'd be looking at 2 FSR.
Is that
building a basement parking
is that unit 4 2,700 square feet?
Yeah.
So essentially, at 800 a square feet.
Well, it wouldn't be 800.
No, I'm talking. Well.
No, that's what I'm saying. The actual unit cost wouldn't be relative, because that's obviously, you can't times 800. That's a huge number. That's not what we'd be doing. It's just in terms of the overall form of the development, it works to fill this in, and that unit just, we didn't want to make this another unit and have 7 units on the site. And the idea is to create different sizes of units, and not just all the same 1,400, 1,500. This could be a 3-bedroom home.
The idea I'm a realtor, so just to speak to the market a little bit and what I see, because we have, there's move-up buyers, there's young families that are in condos, 1 or 2 bedroom, that want to move up, can't reach a single-family home. So there's demand for these kinds of townhouses where the typical ones are 2 bedrooms up or 2 bedroom and a den up, and then an option of a 3rd bedroom down. The other end of the market are downsizers, so folks that have been in family houses, been in bigger houses, they're giving up their 50-foot lot in Kerrisdale, they don't need all that space anymore. They want something central, they still want a private entrance, townhouse, a little bit of a yard, guest accommodation with some privacy for kids that are visiting, or university students, or whatever extended family situation. So it really is a type of housing that has appeal for both move up and downsizers, as well as people who are just looking for a different kind of living situation in the city, that don't want to be in a condominium or a box in the sky. They want to be in a family neighborhood. They want these kinds of amenities, and there's very little available that's available. I mean, townhouses are pretty significantly undersupplied in Vancouver right now.
In relation to those laneway houses that are on top of the 6 parking spaces, they're 2 stories on top of the parking spaces.
Well, 1.5.
1.5. So
Yeah.
in relation to where the building is in its height and how it sits, how tall does that look? If I was to be imagining off the lane,
yeah,
how tall is it gonna be?
What we're showing here, this is the parking, as you say. This is the floor above the parking, like just an 8-foot ceiling with a flat roof on it. And then there's this half-story setback from the lane by about 8 feet, and setback from the west neighbor by 12 feet, setback from the street by 12 feet. So it's kind of pushed back from all the edges and just contained up in there. And the height of that, I think, is around 26 feet. But like this lane and side slopes, I think 8 feet from Willow down to the lane corner. So the whole thing is cascading down. So it's not like it kind of flows down with the lane. So this perception is that it'll step down, like it's kind of showing here. A typical laneway, as you see, a typical laneway is restricted to 20 feet height at the top of the roof. This is about 26 to the top of that the half story up there, those bedrooms. These are just 2 master bedrooms up there. That's all they are, just bedrooms. And this is the living area for one unit and the living area for the other laneway.
Do you know how high the neighbors' garage is?
We haven't had it surveyed, but I don't know, probably 18 feet. What we've shown here is what a laneway might look like on the neighbor's property. Which
So that's not in scale to the neighbor's actual garage.
To their garage? No.
Okay.
No, the laneway, the garage is there maybe, I don't really know. We don't get a survey showing it. It's probably 6 feet lower.
That slopes down.
Yeah, it keeps going down. That's what this is sloping down another 3 or 4 feet from where this laneway is. That's why this laneway looks quite a bit higher than this one, but because this is down lower. Like the top of the roof at this edge here is no higher than what a laneway would typically be. The half story is set back over in here. So this conforms to what a laneway roof would look like on a typical house, typical laneway.
Is there a possibility to make that laneway house blend in like the one that's across the street that was newly built versus standing completely out like that?
Well, yeah, everything's on the table. Yeah, exactly. If you generally feel like the laneway should be a kind of a character heritage style, the feedback we got from our initial discussion with the heritage style is they want it looking different, distinct. That's the typical approach. Like this here, the addition on the back is a very contemporary expression, so the old building stands out as a unique standalone structure.
So you can't just build it on the road, you have to have a separate building.
Yeah, well, you'll be stepping back or be stepping forward. The addition is stepped back, so the church corners, you can see the corner of the church. Where the church ends, you'll see the corner of it. That's this corner here, it's where the church is. And so there's a porch indented in there about 5 feet. So you'll see the corner return. That's kind of a typical approach we would do. So, yeah.
Sketches show how you finish quite frankly, the church that there now has very limited heritage and
Right.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, sure, yeah. So it's
You've
a
done
creepy,
beautiful work in
creepy old place.
neighborhood. So it would be nice to have a sense of how this might.
Yeah, well, come up and have a look. I mean, we've rendered it in narrow 3-inch wood, like heritage 1920s siding, right? So it's all narrow siding, painted wood. The windows are wood. The trims around them are 2x6. This is all sketchy. This is what I would propose. So it's restored to its original 1928 appearance with narrow board siding, wood trims, wood windows, big panes of glass. The front porch is reinstated, not that flat. Well, we don't have a current photo over here, but it would be brought back. But I agree, it's a creepy old nasty thing, and let's flatten it right now. But as just like, wow, let's just kick this in the can, see where we can go with. Because it's an opportunity that once it's gone, we won't get again. To do something creative. And I believe it's the right corner. It's a good corner. It's on a corner. If it was in the middle of the block, I wouldn't even be here trying to discuss it with you. I just think on the corner, it has minimal impact to the community. So like, I see people leaving, but it's like going forward, we have a sheet. Maxine, do you have a sheet there? Yeah, if anyone wants to write any comments, any suggestions, if you want to meet individually with me or in Jonathan at any time, happy to come to your home or discuss it. Any ideas you've got, I think on the notice, our email for our office is there. You're welcome to email suggestions, comments. If you'd like to be kept informed about where we're at in the process, leave your email or contact number, we'll let you know what we're doing. If any suggestions at all, just keep in touch, and we're wide open to talking about it and coming up with something that meets most of your concerns.
And take the time to wander up and have a look at some of the material. And,